We're looking pretty closely at the life and ministry of Mark Finley. He's known, obviously, for his global evangelism with the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Well, the core of a life dedicated to ministry over decades. It's quite a story.
It really is. His impact's been huge, geographically vast.
Right.
So looking at his journey from the early days right up to his leadership roles gives us, I think, some really valuable perspectives on faith in action.
Yeah, the goal is to unpack that for you so you get a richer sense of this lifelong commitment.
Okay, so where do we start? Early life.
Let's do that. His family background is, well, a bit unusual. His father was raised by an uncle, apparently didn't even meet his own mother till he was 7.
That definitely suggests a sort of non-standard start.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it, if that early maybe instability played into his later search for meaning.
Could be. And his father's own spiritual path is key here, before Mark's.
Absolutely. He became a Seventh-day Adventist through a foreman at work, right? Someone shared Adventist books, literature with him.
Yeah, which really highlights how powerful those personal connections can be.
Yeah.
And just sharing literature, it's a simple thing, but look at the impact. Something for you listening to maybe think about.
It really underscores that power of individual outreach, doesn't it? And giving people something tangible to read. It's a theme you see pop up again and again in Finley's own ministry later.
So despite his dad's conversion, Mark was actually raised Catholic. That was the deal his parents made.
Right. Catholic schools, altar boy, the whole thing. He even learned parts of the Mass in Latin.
And he looks back on that positively, you know. He mentions the discipline, the memory skills he picked up. It's interesting how different kinds of training can feed into later strengths.
Oh, for sure. That structured learning, the ritual, it likely built a kind of discipline for study and preparation that must have been invaluable later for sermons and theology.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily connect the dots, but it laid a foundation.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. Mark turns 17, starts working with his dad in the family machine shop.
And the commute becomes seminar time.
Kind of, yeah. His dad had kept his promise about the Catholic upbringing, but now he starts sharing his Adventist beliefs. Gently, though. Just during their drives.
So not forcing it, but just opening a door to different ideas during those, formative years in that trusted relationship.
Exactly. And Mark, well, he was a typical teenager, interested in Saturday night dances, the social stuff.
Naturally.
But his dad, very wisely, kind of nudged him toward attending these evangelistic meetings instead. Offered him rides, made it easy.
And that's what clicked.
Apparently, yes. Hearing about Bible prophecy, specifically Daniel chapter 2, that was the turning point for his own conversion. It shows how that intellectual angle, understanding history through that lens, can really connect with some people.
Yeah, linking faith with like intellectual framework, understanding history, prophecy. It clearly resonated deeply with him, something you might find useful in your own explorations too.
He'd been thinking Catholic university, maybe public university, but this shift led him to Atlantic Union College, an Adventist school.
Though he still had some adjustments, right? I think he found the Sabbath services a bit long at first.
No. Yeah, exactly. Shows that even with a powerful conversion, becoming part of a new faith community is, well, it's a process.
It's not just flicking a switch. It's adjusting to the practices, the culture, the rhythm of life.
So transitioning into ministry, it's surprising maybe that he really struggled with public speaking initially.
You wouldn't think so, listening to him later.
Right. But he had this unique method preaching his sermons to basketballs in the college gym. Can you picture it?
Wow, that paints a picture. It really shows that even gifted communicators often have to work hard, find creative ways to overcome hurdles. Great lesson there for anyone learning a skill. It's pure dedication, isn't it? Practicing like that, probably alone in the gym, shows the effort involved.
And during college, that's when he met his wife, Ernestine Tiny, he calls her.
At a picnic, was it? A three-legged race.
That's the story. And right from the start, they had this shared commitment to ministry. It's clear how important shared values are in a partnership like that.
Definitely. Their partnership seems absolutely central to everything he's done since. And the meeting story, it's just, well, human and relatable.
Even their wedding kind of points to their focus. He actually borrowed a white coat from another evangelist. He didn't have much money.
It really underscores that focus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Ministry first, material things way down the list, starting out very humbly.
His first official ministry job was in Hartford, Connecticut, working with a pastor, O.J. Mills. And apparently he got a lot of responsibility thrown at him really early on.
A steep learning curve, I bet, but valuable. Being trusted early like that can really accelerate your growth, build capacity.
There's a story from that time that really stands out. He and Tiny took in a man, beaten up, intoxicated, just brought him into their home.
Wow. That's putting faith into action, isn't it? Right away, going beyond the pulpit, radical hospitality.
It really says something about their character, even back then.
Definitely.
He also got involved in field schools around then and started seeing he had a gift for connecting with people, for soul winning, as they call it.
But interestingly, the feedback on his actual preaching style wasn't always glowing at first.
Right. Suggests his initial strength might have been more in that personal connection, the one-on-one, rather than the big formal speech. Reminds you that being effective can look different ways.
It's true. Public speaking is key in that role, obviously. But that ability to connect personally can be just as vital, sometimes more so.
And he stresses that the preaching skill wasn't natural. It came from hard work, constant practice, writing out manuscripts.
Yeah, that dedication, again, it's encouraging, really. Shows proficiency often comes through sheer effort and discipline. Writing them out probably gave him that solid structure later on.
And here's a great example of things happening behind the scenes. In East Hartford, this couple basically about to divorce. They encountered some Bible study materials that were put out before Finley's meetings even started. And it softened their hearts, made them receptive before he even arrived.
That's amazing. It really illustrates how that groundwork, that preparation, often pays the way. God working ahead of the event, you could say.
So a big turning point comes. He feels this really specific call, not just to be a pastor, but specifically to be an evangelist.
A moment of clarity.
Yeah.
He prayed about it with his wife. Right?
Yeah. Discerning that specific purpose, that can be huge for anyone.
Absolutely. And it marks a real shift in his focus.
And the confirmation was almost immediate. Like the very next day, he gets the call from the Southern New England Conference.
Wow. Offering him a job as an evangelist, the timing is incredible. Seems like things just lined up.
Right. When you're aligned with that purpose, sometimes opportunities just appear.
So he takes the job, but he has conditions.
Yes. He wanted to build a team. Not just him, but Bible workers for the personal study side, and also self-supporting members, people using their own money and time.
And he needed a trailer for the family. Integrating family life right from the start. That team approach was pretty innovative for the time.
Very strategic, a collaborative model.
And look at the legacy of that team. You mentioned some names, Brad Thorpe, Tony Moore, Steve Cook, John Knobloch.
Yeah, many of them went on to major leadership roles in the church. It shows he wasn't just leading, he was mentoring, building future leaders. That ripple effect is powerful.
Huge impact from investing in young people like that, giving them real experience.
There's a funny story from Boston, too. They're having meetings in a hotel.
Oh.
And some kids pull the fire alarm.
Chaos.
Right. But he uses the disruption, makes an impromptu appeal right there in the hallway or lobby. Yes. And gets a load of conversions, including a head of nursing, some university students, all caught up in the alarm.
You couldn't make it up. Shows how unexpected things, even disruptions, can turn into opportunities if you adapt. Quick thinking on his part.
His whole team philosophy was broad, wasn't it? Training the youth, yes, but also equipping the local church members, reaching the wider community, empowering everyone.
Yeah, a holistic approach, getting everyone involved at different levels.
And apparently the single team members agreed not to date for the first year.
Oh, really? And then what?
Led to a wave of marriages later on, supposedly. Shows the bonds they must have formed working so closely together.
Shared mission, shared experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. Creates deep connections.
So this New England phase lasts about 6 years. Meetings in lots of different cities, Stonington, Fitchburg, Worcester, Hartford, New Haven, Providence, Pawtucket.
Quite the tour. Gave him a lot of experience in different kinds of places within that region. Building connections. The Worcester snowstorm story is interesting. He was meant to preach on a key topic, but the weather was terrible. Hardly anyone came.
Right. Seemed like a washout.
But they rescheduled for Sunday, got a huge crowd, and this one specific person made a life-changing decision based on the exact sermon that got snowed out.
Wow. Talk about timing. Like, that person was meant to hear that message on that day. Shows how setbacks can work out, maybe even for the better. Divine timing, perhaps.
And in Brockton, Massachusetts, a woman from Newfoundland, Canada, just happens to be traveling through, finds the meetings by chance. She'd already been studying, was ready for baptism, and boom, it happens right there.
These coincidences, they seem to point to something bigger orchestrating things sometimes, don't they? connecting people at the right moment.
He does admit New England was tough, though. The weather, obviously, but also the strong Catholic presence, challenges to some of the more controversial topics.
Yeah, you'd need adaptability, cultural sensitivity there for sure. Understanding the local landscape is key.
Okay, so from New England, he gets the call to Chicago to set up a practical training program for seminary students.
The Lake Union Soul Winning Institute. So a shift towards training the next generation of evangelists.
Right, equipping others. And the story of finding the place for it is pretty wild.
The one about the barbershop.
That's it. Just a casual conversation leads them to this old retirement center they could lease for $1 a year.
Incredible. It really underscores that idea. He talks about step out in faith. Sometimes resources just appear in the most unexpected ways. That random chat. Amazing.
Yeah, he seems to really live by that principle.
Yeah.
Act on the vision and the provision will follow. Must have fueled a lot of his big projects.
Had belief in divine support, yeah. So this institute, it grows, right?
Yeah.
Becomes NADI, the North American Division Evangelism Institute. He's there 6 years.
Yeah, solidifying that role in training, shaping how evangelism was taught and done in the church more broadly.
But he didn't stop doing evangelism himself while he was there, did he?
No, he kept running meetings in Chicago and nearby areas, kept his hand in, blending the theory and the practice.
Good balance. And Chicago must have been a different environment from New England.
Definitely. More urban, very diverse ethnically, maybe more open in some ways compared to the more perhaps socially conservative parts of New England he'd been in. Adapting to different cultures is crucial.
Absolutely essential for outreach.
Then comes a really major international move. He's called to be the ministerial secretary for the Trans-European Division.
Wow, that's a huge area. 17 countries, including places like Hungary, Poland, Yugoslavia, still behind the Iron Curtain then.
Totally different world. Politically charged, complex, a massive shift.
Ministry under communism. That must have had unique challenges. Government departments, controlling religion, restrictions on everything, needing permits.
Yeah, you had to be really careful, very creative in your approach, navigate things delicately.
So how did he approach it? In Poland, for example.
His initial strategy was quite clever, actually. He focused on health programs, anti-smoking campaigns, vegetarian cooking classes, things like that.
Meeting practical needs first. Build trust, gain government approval that way. Smart, opens doors.
And it worked. There's an amazing story from Gdansk about a communist technology specialist.
Yeah?
His job was actually to monitor the Solidarity Union, but he secretly started attending Finley's health meetings and eventually converted and got baptized.
No way.
Yeah.
Just shows you, doesn't it? Beliefs can cross any line. People find truth in the most unexpected places, even within those systems.
Equally powerful, maybe even more so, is the story of the neo-Nazi in Gdansk.
Right.
Guy had brain cancer, was initially very anti-religion, but someone gave him Finley's tapes. He listens, converts, asks for baptism just before he expects to die.
Wow.
And then, miraculously, his life gets extended for over a month after the baptism. It's just a profound story of transformation, grace, even in the darkest situations.
That's incredible. The reach of that message, even through tapes, and the timing. Wow.
Then in Hungary, this is during the shift away from communism, he's actually invited to speak at universities.
So things are opening up. Dialogue about faith and science, topics that were off limits before.
Exactly. And there's one story where he uses logic, asks questions to engage with atheist students.
How did that go down?
Apparently really well. Instead of just preaching, he engaged their intellect, and afterwards, lots of students asked for Bibles. It shows that respectful dialogue can be really effective.
Meeting people where they are, intellectually. Sparking curiosity. Yeah, that makes sense.
There's also a kind of funny, heartwarming story about a famous Hungarian rock band.
A rock band at his meetings.
Well, they were rehearsing nearby, making a lot of noise before one meeting, some initial tension. But then 4 young women, sort of groupies with the band,
Okay.
they end up wandering into the meeting, get converted, and later dedicate their lives to ministry.
You're kidding. That's amazing. Talk about unexpected paths to faith. Different worlds colliding.
He mentions the constant presence of state agents at the meetings, though, always being watched.
Must have been unnerving.
But he also says the governments kind of appreciated the Adventist Church's non-political stance. It gave them a bit more room to operate.
Right. Staying focused on the spiritual and community side, navigating the politics carefully, that was probably key.
There's an anecdote that shows how sensitive things were. A youth director wrote an article, mentioned the Iron Curtain, and got his visa denied.
Wow. Just for using that phrase.
Yeah.
Shows how careful you had to be with every word.
And to get access to one difficult country, Finley actually wrote a positive article about its history and culture first.
Building bridges, finding common ground,
Yeah.
cultural intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Showing respect.
Yeah. And there's that incredibly moving story of the pastor in Czechoslovakia.
The one who chose to clean sewers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he could stay in Prague with his church members and keep the Sabbath. What dedication, what sacrifice people made during that era.
That's profound. Humble service, unwavering commitment, even facing that kind of hardship, really speaks to the depth of conviction.
Okay, let's shift to the Soviet Union itself, Moscow. His first trip was 1991, right as things were changing dramatically.
And at that point, the Adventist church had, just one congregation in Moscow, meeting in a shared building.
Exactly. One single group allowed by the government sharing with Baptists sets the stage for what happened next.
Which was pretty explosive, right? The first series at Pauline University.
Over 500 baptisms, just like that. Shows the incredible spiritual hunger there after decades of suppression.
People were ready, searching.
And then the meetings in the Kremlin Palace, the Kremlin.
6,500 people, twice a night. It's hard to even imagine. Preaching the gospel inside the symbolic heart of Soviet power. That's a historical moment.
Absolutely. A massive shift. And apparently, people were scalping tickets outside.
Selling tickets to evangelistic meetings, that's wild. Shows the intense interest, the perceived value. People were desperate for something.
And the demand for Bibles was overwhelming. Huge numbers enrolling in Bible school. Just a thirst for scripture, for personal study.
Makes sense. It's central to the message, and people wanted to engage with it directly.
Press coverage was huge too, but mixed. Positive reports, but also protests, negative reactions.
Which you'd probably expect, right? Society was in flux, lots of different viewpoints, tensions.
There's that funny story about the reporter from the communist newspaper.
The one who interviewed him about Lenin.
Yeah, and ends up publishing this detailed Bible study on the state of the dead, the second coming, salvation, core Adventist beliefs.
You couldn't make that up. The message getting out in the most unexpected ways through secular, even communist channels. Ironic doesn't cover it.
Then there's the really dramatic incident in '92, a big communist rally planned for Red Square.
Right when Finley had meetings scheduled in the Kremlin.
Exactly. The government was worried about clashes, obviously, and they made a decision.
What did they do?
They deployed the army. Not to protect the rally, but to ensure safe passage for the thousands going to Finley's religious meetings.
Wow. That's a powerful symbol of the changing times. Prioritizing the religious gathering over the political one, right there in Red Square. Incredible.
When you think about the history, the persecution Adventists faced there, it's just a staggering turnaround.
Absolutely profound shift in religious freedom. Unprecedented opportunities opening up.
And the long-term impact, it's huge. From that one church to, 27 in Greater Moscow now?
Yeah, many with hundreds of members.
Yeah.
Multiple generations of Adventist families now, tracing back to those meetings. It shows the lasting effect of that initial work.
He tells stories, too, of individuals. Someone who threw rocks at first, someone else who was a real hard nut to crack.
But they came around eventually.
Yeah, baptized later. Just shows the impact on individual lives, people from all sorts of backgrounds, initial reactions.
A message reached them anyway, even the resistant ones.
They also held meetings in the Olympic Stadium, 18,000 people.
Massive crowds. But that came with challenges too, didn't it? Opposition.
Yeah, apparently a cult leader and her followers were causing disruptions, trying to sabotage things. They even had to get ushers deputized.
So even in times of great openness, you still face opposition. Requires resilience, community support, maybe even official help sometimes.
So after all that intensity overseas, he comes back to the States, taught briefly at Andrews University.
And then gets the invitation to join It Is Written television.
Right, for 14 years. A big shift to media ministry, reaching a huge global audience that way.
Television allows for incredible reach, doesn't it? A powerful medium.
And the stories of its impact are pretty amazing. There's one about a woman in Brazil contemplating suicide.
Yeah.
And she turns on the TV, sees It Is Written, finds hope, changes her mind. Just shows how media can intersect with someone's life at a critical, deeply personal moment.
That's incredibly powerful. Reaching across continents, offering a lifeline like that.
Another one involves a Catholic priest secretly doing the It Is Written Bible studies. Well, apparently his bishop knew about it and was actually okay with it, even supportive of him studying the Bible more deeply.
Interesting. Shows how media can sometimes bridge those denominational divides. facilitate that personal engagement with Scripture across different backgrounds.
Then there's the memorable story of filming the Daniel in the Lion's Den segment.
With a real lion. Joseph, was it?
Yeah. He talks about the trainer's instructions, how the lion didn't quite behave as expected. Must have been pretty nerve-wracking. That's a bit of human interest, right?
Huh. A lighthearted glimpse into the practical challenges of making Bible stories visual. I bet that was intense.
He also mentions a near-death experience. Filming near the altar of Satan's site in Pergamum,
What happened?
encountered venomous snakes, vipers. He felt it was divine protection that saved him, a reminder of the perceived spiritual dangers in some places.
Wow. Yeah, highlights potential risks and that strong sense of God's protection.
He really emphasizes the huge role of all the Adventist TV ministries, 3ABN, Hope Channel, It Is Written, their collective impact.
For sure. Reaching millions globally, sharing their message, providing guidance. It's substantial.
And there's that really poignant story, praying on 3ABN specifically for someone considering suicide.
Right.
And later, he actually meets the person he prayed for, who didn't go through with it and had since become a pastor themselves.
Oh, wow. That's full circle. A direct link between the media, outreach, prayer, and this incredible life transformation into ministry. So powerful.
So moving towards his later leadership roles, he served as a vice president at the General Conference.
Focusing on coordinating world evangelism.
Right.
Keeping that mission focus central for the whole church.
Exactly. That passion for the mission seems constant. He talks about the Mission to the Cities initiative.
Targeting, 650 major cities globally, including big efforts in places like New York.
Yeah. A really ambitious strategic focus on reaching those dense urban populations.
Shows the continued commitment to outreach in key centers.
And underlying it all is his deep conviction that the Adventist church is, as he puts it, a divinely raised movement with a specific, crucial mission.
That core belief seems to be the engine driving everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. He talks about his current motivations, too. Still wanting to be involved in projects bigger than himself, mentoring younger pastors.
And still wanting to see God work in those impossible situations, still passionate, still focused on empowering the next generation.
Yeah, that legacy, the mentorship, and a belief that faith can still overcome huge obstacles.
What's this about a training center for elders?
Right, his vision for training church elders, lay leaders in a community with no Adventist presence currently, emphasizing equipping local members for outreach.
That's forward thinking, recognizing how vital that well-trained lay leadership is for growth at the grassroots level, empowering people on the ground.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground. What an incredible journey, really. Mark Finley's life, his ministry, it's just a powerful example of faith, dedication, and seeing God work in surprising ways.
Absolutely. You see those consistent threads, don't you? The early influences, the need for perseverance when things get tough, the unexpected paths, the sheer impact of committed service over decades.
And for you listening, maybe the key takeaway is that response to a calling. Finley seemed to consistently act on what he felt God was leading him to do, even when it was challenging or uncertain.
Right. That sense of purpose, combined with taking action, led to these extraordinary results. It might make you reflect on your own life, times you felt a pull towards something, how you responded. There could be insights there.
Definitely. Hopefully his story inspires you to think about your own unique calling, whatever it might be, and to realize your own potential for making a difference, maybe in ways you don't even expect yet.